Today, we are looking at the 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's jump right into this. We are going to be looking at the draft class, the starting roster, as well as a records predictions. So stay tuned for all three of those. Starting out with the draft class, we are going to be excited for the future, right? It starts out number 21, Derek Harmon. I was a big sucker for Amari in Hampton. I was dying to take him at 21, but after knowing exactly the type of motivation Derek Harmon has, the vision that we have for him, and looking at how the draft ended up panning out, I am really happy with how this ended up turning out. Not many people are going to give this draft class an A+. I'm a tough grader, but I'm a Steelers fan, and I actually really liked how this turned out. And so we sent our second round pick for DK Metcalf. Especially without George Pickens, we need to have a number one. So I do like having him on the squad. I think with Aaron Rodgers, he's going to be great. Caleb Johnson was our third round selection. And Caleb Johnson, I wasn't the biggest fan of him, but a lot of people were. And I actually really like him in combination with Jaylen Warren in Arthur Smith's system. So to me, I absolutely loved it. So I love it in retrospect because it is a good fit. He looks good in black and gold. He's young, but also proved to be able to be a workhorse back. So I really do like, especially as we continue to retool our offensive line, to see how he's going to be able to perform for us for the long haul. Then you have Jack Sawyer in the fourth round. A lot of people got their feathers ruffled when we took Jack Sawyer, but ultimately, it's a fourth round pick. They're not supposed to be a true edge two. So you're getting someone who is going to be in that rotation. And Jack Sawyer is a high character guy who's a super high floor, early down run defender who has some pass rushing upside. Might not have the longest arms in the world, but he made it work at Ohio State. And especially with the fact that we're probably going to be paying TJ Watt an extraordinary amount of money. Slick Rick ended up reporting it. We'll see if our boy Ricky ends up coming through again. But it's just, I think it's definitely a good idea, especially with TJ getting up there in years, and then some new contracts might be coming around for some of the other guys, for us to have that redundancy. Edge rusher is one of the most valuable positions in the NFL, and we do a very good job of being able to replace it, maintain it, and keep it as one of the best units in the NFL. And I think Jack Sawyer will continue to do that. Yahya Black might have been my favorite pick of the draft. Him and Will Howard, of course. In retrospect, now that we also have Aaron Rodgers, I was kind of bummed out because Will Howard probably won't ever get a chance to start, but I think for the value, we'll talk about him in a second. Yahya Black was incredible. First off, Keanu Benton, in my opinion, he used to play some nose at Wisconsin. I believe he was around 317, and he ends up being able to profile a lot better in the NFL, in my opinion, as a defensive tackle. And you got Derek Harmon and Keanu Benton as basically those two guys, and I think Yahya Black is going to end up being that pure nose for us. So that 3-4 defensive end, as you like to call it, I think Derek Harmon as well as Keanu Benton are the long haul options there, as Yahya Black, and probably as Cam Hayward retires, takes that step up to be the true starter. He has 35-inch arms. He gave everyone an absolute headache at the Senior Bowl in Mobile. So super big fan of Yahya Black. Honestly, in retrospect, with Aaron Rodgers signing, I'd probably switch my favorite pick. I did import this from my initial draft grades that were right after the draft. But I think Yahya Black's a huge win. Not enough people are talking about that. He was a top 150 player for me, and we got him at 164. Position of need, and a player that has some really amazing measurables. Not the most athletic guy in the world, but he is somebody who will be a mismatch if he ends up working out. Then you have Will Howard at 185. Again, if Aaron Rodgers has some health concerns as well, like Will Howard is kind of the guy that you dream to have as a backup. I know we brought in Mason Rudolph. That's redundancy. Obviously, it's not a super long-term deal. And Mason Rudolph at, I believe, $5 million a year, not the worst thing on planet Earth. Will Howard, someone who I think will absolutely be a great leader in the locker room, as someone who's a great supporter to the main quarterback. And because the draft's in Pittsburgh next year, we're probably going to draft someone in the first round or in the first two. But Will Howard, with his personality and the fact that he has stepped up and he's been able to make big plays and big moments and be able to lead his team to a championship, that's something that I really do want on our roster. He was my QB3 coming to the draft. To get him at 185, spectacular value. Then, of course, Carson Bruner, there's a chance that he ends up playing more special teams than anything. Of course, he is more of a Nepo pick, but we usually do a pretty good job when we select the kids that of people who are either on the team or on the staff. So Carson ended up having a good lurk in, I ended up posting on X. So shout out to him. You guys can end up looking up the last name Bruner on my page. You guys can end up seeing that clip, but ended up lurking Miller Moss. And I really like how that ended up turning out for him. And then you have Dante Kent. We need some cornerback depth eventually, but we'll talk about the Jalen Ramsey trade in a moment. But let's dive in to the offense, this is just going to be a look at a very high overview of our starting roster and some guys to be able to discuss. We have a lot of notable at backups, which is a very good place for us to be, but nobody really starting at the moment, which is a bit of a concern. But let's dive right into this. Starting at that quarterback position, we'll talk about Aaron Rodgers. And I mean, I'm not the biggest guy on Aaron Rodgers. I do think he's an upgrade even over someone like Will Howard or Mason Rudolph. So it does give ourselves the best chance to win. And you might say, well, that's kind of the goal every single year, right? Try to put yourself in the best position to win. I do think that some of the moves we made just didn't shape that identity, whether it would be trading away George Pickens, obviously trading away Minka. We'll talk about the defense in a second. Now, I'm not saying Minka is the all-pro that he was. And again, we're going to talk about defense in a second. But I do think that some of our moves indicated we're trying to win now, but some of our moves were like, we're also trying to mitigate so that we have something for the future. And you need to have some balance there, but it felt like we were going on the extreme polar opposites to where it's not balancing out. And the only way it would balance is if there's just so many moves on both sides that they just weigh each other out. And you kind of want to be a little bit closer to the center. We have a lot of win now moves that we ended up making. Aaron Rodgers, of course, that 1-year deal. I do think he's still going to be a very serviceable quarterback. You think about Ryan Tannehill with Arthur Smith. I think Aaron Rodgers is still going to have a really solid season. Looking at our running back room, you have Jaylen Warren as well as Caleb Johnson. Those are our primary two. Kenny Gainwell as well needs to be mentioned. But I mean, again, a really solid group of guys there. And it's just the problem being not the lead group in the NFL. Probably not a top 15 running back room. And that's being optimistic with Caleb Johnson. I think we could be closer to like 25 to 32. I like the players, but we're getting to a point in the NFL where NFL running back rooms are just full of guys or who are really talented. We have really talented players, but does it stack up versus the rest of the league? I do worry a little bit about that, especially since the fact that I don't fully believe in our offensive line. But let's continue on. You have Cam Hayward there at fullback at the moment, but Jonnu Smith technically could be taking the H-back role. We'll see about that. I mean, he is essentially an H-back. So whether it's Cam Hayward, whether it's Jonnu Smith, I imported this from Our Lads, so shout out to them, but they did not have an official position designated for Jonnu at the time of recording. But we'll go to the receiving room, and then we'll go to the offensive line. So looking at the receiving room, you got DK Metcalf. I mean, obviously, I already talked about that in the draft class room, but we needed a wide receiver one in 3 years because we gave him, I believe, a 4-year extension on top of the year that he has. He's going to be really solid value. So I think it's going to be great, especially if he ends up working out, especially if we get a quarterback that can use him. That's the biggest thing. Can he stay healthy? Can he stay on the field? And then, because I mean, he is an absolute, he can get his energy up on the field and get himself kicked off the field from time to time. But I would say that's like, I trust that he'll be a good Pittsburgh Steeler. But the biggest thing is, can he be consistent enough on the field? Because we all know the talent's there. Production so far hasn't matched up. And then you got Robert Woods. That's kind of a kick in the balls. I had to double check and like make sure that nothing ended up switching up, because just for some reason, I don't understand why we can't have a wide receiver too. And I know that we're maybe going to bring in Gabe Davis. I think we should if his knee checks out. And like, well, obviously just the health in general. I mean, the guy has kind of been banged up, but he's 26 years old. I would assume that we can end up bringing him on. Does feel very Pittsburgh Steelery to kind of bring on somebody that nobody really wants and try to revive their career or get them back on track. But Robert Woods, to me, as our number 2, is just very terrifying. I just do not like where we're at. I ended up saying the worst group is the tackle group. Right wide receiver or wide receiver 2 is not a great one either. Calvin Austin in the slot. I just hate the fact that there's probably a good chance that Calvin's gone. Like Calvin Austin, when he came out, I thought that he was just an older version of Josh Downs with some more deep threat ability, and he's just not being utilized like that. I kind of want to see if Aaron Rodgers can try to manipulate the offense to where he could be used a little bit more in a Josh Downs role as a quick separator who has that deep threat ability. Calvin Austin, to me, is one of my favorite players on our entire team. But the problem is we just have never utilized him correctly. And when we do, he goes off. And then, of course, maybe there's some health concerns in terms of durability for the long haul. But we'll see what happens with Roman Wilson sitting on the sidelines, essentially. He's coming back from injury. We'll see if there's going to be a vision for Calvin Austin for the future. I hope there is. I hope he breaks out and then we end up signing him for, 3 years, $30 million, and we can essentially get like a Tutu Atwell level deal on him. But I mean, it is what it is. Then let's talk about that tight end room. I mean, of course, this is what we were all kind of talking about the other day, where we end up trading away Minka Fitzpatrick as well as a 5th-round pick for Jalen Ramsey, as well as a Jonnu Smith in a 7th. So Jonnu is going to be a really fun one. Again, he could end up being listed as the H-back. Feel free to comment that if you like. But we have Freiermuth, Jonnu, as well as Darnell. How many times are we going to be in 31 personnel? I am not sure. However, I mean, we're going to be perfectly fine, in my opinion. It's like we have a lot of versatility in that group. Obviously, Pat is going to be a little bit more of that short yardage back. Jonnu, definitely the guy after the catch. And then, Darnell is the primary blocker. But, it's just Jonnu was Art's guy. He's been on 3 teams with Arthur Smith now. That's just something that he's going to want, and he's going to go and get it. That's understandable. Apparently, there was rumors that it was just, a 5th for Jonnu and a 7th. And because Jalen wanted to end up announcing his own, returning to the team, or not returning to the team, but coming to the Steelers, they ended up kind of just bundling it together. It was supposed to be make up for Jalen and then Jonnu in a 7th for a 5th. But regardless, still, I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think Jonnu adds anything to our offense, really. That's crazy. But Arthur is the one coach where I would say if we wanted another tight end in the mix, even though we don't need another tight end, this is the OC that would maximize Jonnu. So we'll see how that ends up working out. Then we'll look at the defense as well. Again, going defensive. Oh, I'm tripping. We ended up not talking about the offensive line. Well, it's because I don't like talking about the offensive line. Because looking at those tackles, man, Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu. Broderick has just shown not to be great. He ended up grading as someone who wasn't a starter quality for me when he was coming out in the draft. He had a 73 grade, and that was before I became even more of a tough cookie than I am now. But I mean, he was someone who I thought was a high floor, fringe starter. He hasn't shown to be that, and that's really scary. And one of the things that bothers me the most about the Steelers is our weird fetish with taking left tackles and trying to put them at right, including Fautanu here. I have a deep feeling that Fautanu coming off an injury, he's going to have some struggles. I think he's going to be the left guard of the future. I just don't think he's going to end up lasting at tackle. I pray to God I'm wrong, but I do think he'll end up being Isaac Suamalu's replacement, which is a good transition to talk about him. I mean, obviously in a contract year, but he's that level of stability that we kind of need at the moment with Frazier and McCormick entering year 2 as well as Fautanu. But I mean, we just have a young offensive line, a lot of guys that don't necessarily have enough credence to their name in order to earn what they are supposed to have. Zach Frazier's not in that mix. He's done a fantastic job. Really happy that core strength really ended up turning out as a positive. But McCormick, someone who I still think has a lot of growing pains, really good run blocker, but I do think that, we are one of the weaker offensive lines in the entire NFL. But now we can end up jumping to the defense and starting out with that defensive line and building out to those skilled positions. We look at the edge core. I mean, edge core is fucking stacked. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, you look at Herbig, you look at Sawyer. I mean, that is a core group of guys that you should be really, really proud of, and at least I am. Then you look at the defensive interior. We're talking about Derek Harmon at that defensive end spot. These are the nomenclature used by our lads. I just want to keep it pretty consistent with how they end up handling it. But, the nose tackle spot with Keanu, I do think he's going to transition to that Cam Hayward spot in the next year or two, and then Yaya Black will end up taking on that nose tackle position. And that's a really good spot to be. A bunch of youth who has a ton of talent. I am all for that. That's something that's I'm really proud of our team. But we end up looking at that linebacking core. You have Patrick Queen, you have Peyton Wilson. I mean, that's just a good core to have. On top of that, I think we still have Cole Holcomb off the top of my head. Forgot to end up putting him on this list as well. But just a good group of guys. And I just confirmed it as well. But our linebacking core, honestly, not bad. You also look behind that. You have Carson Bruner, who we talked about, Malik Harrison, who is a free agent acquisition. It's just a good, solid group of guys, and I think that's a good place to be. Our linebacking core, for once, is actually semi-stable there. I just love the fact that I have Queen and Wilson there. Who cares if Wilson won't last more than 5 years? We have someone who we could play right now, and I think we've been lost in the sauce, so to speak, with that. You look at the defensive backs, you got Deshaun Elliott. Big fan of him. I obviously love the fact that he's going to be on our team for a while longer. But then Juan Thornhill, there's some moments where obviously Juan has shown some excellence, but there are also some moments where I really do question whether he's a starting caliber player in the NFL. So TBD on that. It does scare me. People are talking about Jalen Ramsey, which of course, this is going to be the grandeur of it all. Jalen Ramsey, like can end up playing safety. I mean, Jalen's making 24 a year. Do we want to utilize a contract of someone who still is a pretty top tier corner as one of those safety spots? And the answer should be no. But my problem with Jalen at nickel is because, I mean, shoot, we have Beanie there. I mean, apparently, I'm ending up looking at this right now. We at least moved Sebastian Castro, according to our lads. Again, there's no official depth chart until games start coming out. But Sebastian is now at strong safety. So at least there's something about that. But shoot, I mean, Sebastian Castro is someone who I love to death. I think he could play perfectly in the nickel. Like, we still don't have that rangy free safety that I really love. And I guess as Jalen continues to age, I think in the next year, we don't have to get a replacement for Slay. Jalen can bounce back to the boundary. That's a good redundancy to have as maybe we draft a rookie in the second or the third round to be able to take on those responsibilities. But as Jalen gets older, he can't end up transitioning to that free safety role. It's a big bet. And that's why I initially did not love the Minka trade. I mean, Jalen is regressing slower than Minka did, but Minka could also bounce back. I don't think our entire defense was in a position to truly have him step up the way he should. I know enough bullshit excuses, right? Like enough of that. But I do think that, when you lose a core piece of your defense, I told my buddy who's an Eagles fan, it felt like we lost BG. BG like a year or two ago. BG, we kind of know that he's not going to be the primary contributor the way he used to be, but there's still those moments where you really have that piece. And then, of course, he is a part of the identity. And I think identity really matters. Chemistry matters, identity matters. But regardless, we're still a damn good team. I mean, that's where we're at, right? You have really good depth at a lot of positions. I mean, we could end up just signing Justin Simmons, and all of a sudden, pretty much all the issues with the defense are gone. And we could end up winning a championship through the defense this year if Aaron Rodgers can play like Ryan Tannehill did back when Brian Tannehill was with Arthur Smith. So I think we're in a really good spot. Let's jump over and look at the records prediction because I'm excited to see how this ends up panning out. Now, this is going to be really fun. Obviously, we're going to be going and diving into every single team. It's always my goal during July to have a video every day because usually June is a super light time where I'm really studying the tape for the prospects coming up in the next draft cycle. So this is a really good opportunity now for me to have an excuse to have a video every single day. And so stay tuned. We're going to be potentially switching a thing or two around. Maybe I end up having that gut feeling where, hey, the Seahawks are going to beat us. And then, well, the more I thought about it, I looked deeper into the Seahawks than in that specific video, and something felt like I really undervalued the Steelers that game. Well, I could give the Steelers an extra victory. So, of course, this is going to be progressive. But let's get excited for this. This is, of course, live as well. Okay, so week number 1, we end up facing the New York Jets. And I mean, we might as well make this a little bit bigger, make it a little bit prettier, if you will. But I mean, Justin Fields leading the New York Jets. I personally am not really moved by this. I think that they're a new organization with a lot of turmoil going on. It might be at home, but we do have the far superior team. So definitely going to be giving that to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Shout out to Playoff Predictors as well. This is their website, so I want to give them the credit that they deserve as well. At number 2, I'm in mock draft mode already, aren't I? In week number 2, we end up having the Seattle Seahawks at home, and they're another organization that is still developing their identity. Clint Kubiak coming in. I mean, Clint was really red hot as an OC earlier this past year for New Orleans. So they could end up coming out guns blazing, Sam Darnold there. But I do think, again, with a new quarterback in the room, with a pretty damn revamped receiving core as well, it might be a little bit of a slow start. Now, the same thing could be said with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but we are at home. I'm actually going to give us the first 2 wins, and I think Aaron Rodgers is going to start off red hot. Now, week number 3, we end up going to New England, and New England's one of the most improved teams. I think that they're one of the biggest dark horses in the entire NFL. Like, they have one of the more underrated offensive lines because we all think they're number 32. And I think they're more close to like that 28 to 25 range, which you might say, okay, well, how can you say it's the most underrated? It's because we all pretty much just put them at the bottom and kind of forget about them. I think that they have a lot more talent than what we like to give them. So I would just say there's something there for sure. We will still outmatch them in the trenches, and that is going to be a major factor. Now, you could also say the same about New England's defensive line versus our offensive line. First off, their edge rushing core is one of those that people do consider the worst in the NFL. However, we have one of the worst tackle cores in the NFL. We have a tackle that's coming off an injury. Also, I mean, they're going to be battling it out versus New York as well as Seattle. And we're at home, or we're away, I would say. We're in New England. I actually think this is going to be an underrated selection here for week number 3, and that's going to be going to the New England Patriots. At week number 4, we actually get to face the Vikings, and Vikings have JJ McCarthy there. Like, they're a very good team, and they're going to be a pain in the ass to deal with. But I do think when we're at home, it gives us that slight advantage, a domed team as well when they're coming out into the AFC North. It's just, we have a new level of physicality. They have such a young quarterback that they're still going to be developing a lot of tendencies. I think that Pittsburgh's defense is just going to be a little bit too good. I mean, big play Slay, he might be a shell of himself, but he is still damn solid and reliable. You also have Jalen Ramsey, Joey Porter Jr. Those 3 corners are not something you want to face early in the year, but I do think that Minnesota will build up momentum as time goes on. We have the shitty early bye in week number 5. That sucks, but I still think we're going to be okay. Week number 6, we end up facing, and we actually, coming off that bye, we end up facing an in-division rival here in Cleveland. Cleveland as well, going through a lot of internal turmoil. Of course, you got Deshaun Watson with all the stuff that's going on with him. We have multiple quarterbacks taken in this draft. And then, of course, you have Kenny Pickett you traded for. There's a lot of confusion inside the building. And if you're going to have an extra week to prepare and have one of the top defenses, I just personally think the Steelers will have a red-hot start. Now, that red-hot start has to stop sometime. And the Cincinnati Bengals, even though I think that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase carry pretty damn heavily, they still are one of the best teams in the NFL. And so I do think when you go to their house in prime time, as much as I love Aaron Rodgers, I do think that the Bengals still will find a way to be able to get a win there. It's the AFC North. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a fun one. We have a mini bye because it's a Thursday to Sunday game, and we end up playing the Packers in week number 8. Now, the Packers are a damn good squad. I mean, one of the best. And they're even investing in their receiving core as well. They have a high-end offensive line, and they're probably going to extend Rasheed Walker as well. But solid offensive line, solid run game, solid quarterback play. Now, Jordan Love slips up in some big moments, which our defensive back room, especially we get Justin Simmons. If we end up bringing Justin Simmons on, I think I would securely put this with Pittsburgh. Their edge core still developing. They fired the defensive line coach, right? They still believe that there's a lot more to be had with their defensive line group. And Jeff Hafley is a fun, aggressive defensive back coach, he was a DC there for, a head coach, if I'm not mistaken, for Boston College. And then he might have been a DC. I'm tripping. But he obviously is a very good defensive coordinator there for the Packers. I think this is going to be a scrappy battle. And, they're both 2 North teams. They both love to be able to scrap it out. And so I'm actually going to give this to the Steelers because it's at home and we have that mini bye, so we're going to be slightly more rested. At week number 9, we face the Colts, and I got to be honest, I still think we're going to be able to take on the Colts regardless of the quarterback situation they have. I think we're getting a pretty cupcake schedule. The only one where I really feel is a coin toss at the moment is this Packers game. You could talk about Seattle if they come out red hot, but I do think with the defensive backcourt that we have, it actually kind of matches 1-to-1 with how they're developing their receiving core. At week number 10, I think the Chargers this year have a lot more to prove than what people want to give them credit for, especially Justin Herbert and co. And they have a dynamic team. They, of course, have Amari and Hampton. And I'm going to have Amari and Hampton kind of spank us in this one. We're going to be going with the Chargers. Now, I want to give the Steelers a nice little split because it's the AFC North. We like to split games in the AFC North. But the Bengals are also coming off a bye. That's an issue. We're going to be giving this game to the Bengals in week number 11. Again, I think that they're a super-powered team. I think they deserve a lot of love and a lot of respect. I'm going to be giving them the credit there. Week number 12, we're facing Ben Johnson and the Bears. And early in the season, I would give this game to the Steelers all day. A lot of veteranship. They're going to come out red hot. But Ben Johnson's probably going to be able to mesh with Caleb Williams by this point. The offensive line is pretty damn solid. You look at the receiving core, elite. I mean, the one area I'm surprised they don't have more firepower is their run game. And that would be one of the areas where I think we'd win. So It's just not something I would think too much of. You end up looking at their offense, it's super high firepower. You look at the defense as well, and it's actually really damn solid. It's very underrated defense. So I think at home, it's a fun one, but I'm going to give this one to the Bears. The Bills are coming off a mini bye, and we're just going to get kicked in the nuts here. We're going to end up, like, unfortunately, facing the Bills when they have even more rest coming off, again, that mini bye. They'll be playing a Thursday to a Sunday game, so they have an extra, what is that, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 days of rest. That's not going to be fun to play against. And then, like, talk about unfortunate scheduling. We end up facing the Ravens on a mini bye as well at their home. I just think that's going to be a tough one for us to win. But I do think we end up kicking Miami's ass. Miami is just not in a good spot right now. I do think they're going to go through a restructure of their organization. At week number 16, we end up facing the Detroit Lions at their home. And that's going to be a bit of an issue. Detroit Lions, as much as I think that they've made some pretty questionable moves over the past couple years in terms of maybe not being super aggressive in certain areas, maybe neglecting certain other ones, they still have done a fantastic job. And I still think they're one of the best rosters in the entire NFL. It's going to be very difficult at this time of year for us to be able to sneak out a win or two, especially versus a team of that caliber. In week 17, we're going to beat the Browns. We're going to sweep them. I just personally don't think they have the quarterback to be able to do anything. I just hate to say it, but I don't think they'll have, even if it's Gabriel, even if it's Shadur Sanders, I don't think they'll have the mental reps by that point because there's so much in terms of musical chairs shifting around for it to really end up paying off. And then in week number 18, I do believe that the Ravens will be resting their starters. And even if they aren't, it's a lot more on the line for Pittsburgh to be able to win in this situation than anything else. I'm going to be going with the Steelers there at week number 18. And that puts us at 9-8. I literally did not even think about that. That is such the most Steelers thing on planet Earth, is it not? We end up actually doing a pretty good job in division, though. I mean, of course, sweeping the Browns, splitting with the Ravens, and of course, we end up being swept by the Bengals because of unfortunate timing with the Bengals coming off a bye and playing us. But I still think this team absolutely is built for a solid season. 9-8 is not a bad thing, especially when you look at the teams we're playing. So what do you think? What record would you give us? What games would you flip? Let me know in the comment section below. See you later. Peace.